Dr. Alexey Morozov, an experienced anesthesiologist resuscitator in a large city hospital, arrived for his night shift with the same sense of routine that had guided him through countless evenings before. The hospital at night was never truly quiet. Ambulances pulled up to the entrance with flashing lights, their sirens fading into the background as quickly as they had risen. The corridors echoed with the hurried steps of nurses, the rustle of stretchers being wheeled across linoleum floors, and the sharp calls of orderlies trying to clear space for incoming patients. Phones rang incessantly at the reception desk, and the hum of machinery behind the emergency ward doors gave the place a constant mechanical heartbeat. Morozov moved through this chaos with practiced calm, his mind already partitioning the night into hours of observation, interventions, and the steady rhythm of crisis management. Yet beneath this professional detachment, something unsettled stirred in him. He felt a heaviness in the air that he could not explain, as if the hospital itself were holding its breath. It was the kind of premonition he had learned never to ignore, though he could never articulate its cause. The night began like many others, with minor traumas, intoxications, and chronic patients who seemed to know the emergency ward as well as the staff did. But just as he began settling into the flow of his duties, the sliding doors of the emergency entrance opened to reveal paramedics pushing in a young woman on a stretcher. She appeared lifeless, her skin pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. The paramedics spoke quickly, describing how she had been found unconscious in the middle of the city, collapsed without warning, no witnesses able to explain what had happened. She had no identification, no personal belongings, nothing that could anchor her to a name or a story. Morozov glanced at the monitors as the team connected her to equipment. The readings were erratic. Heart rate spiking and falling without clear pattern, oxygen saturation dropping dangerously, blood pressure hovering at the edge of collapse. Yet her body bore no wounds, no marks of trauma, no external signs that could explain the catastrophic failure unraveling within. The staff worked with the usual precision, but an unease passed among them, unspoken yet palpable. There was something strange about the case, something that did not align with the hundreds of emergencies they had handled. For Morozov, the sense of foreboding deepened with every unstable reading on the monitors. He stood at her bedside, watching the fragile flicker of life on the screen, and felt with unshakable certainty that this night would not follow the familiar patterns of his profession. This case was different. It carried with it the weight of something that would not merely be treated and resolved, but would instead leave a lasting mark on him. The young woman was rushed into the intensive care unit, her stretcher rolling swiftly under the harsh ceiling lights. The monitors were prepared, the ventilator readied, the sterile smell of disinfectant filling the air as the team surrounded her. Dr. Alexey Morozov took command of the situation with the precision born of long years in emergency medicine, yet beneath his outward calm, there lingered a growing unease. Electrodes were placed across her chest, an endotracheal tube guided into her airway, and intravenous lines secured. The machines responded instantly, filling the room with a symphony of electronic pulses and warning tones. Numbers flickered across screens, heart rate surging into dangerous tachycardia, then plummeting as if the heart itself struggled to choose between life and stillness. Oxygen saturation rose inexplicably high, only to drop within seconds as if the body rejected the very air it was given. Each maneuver produced contradictions. When ventilated, her lungs expanded cleanly, with no evidence of obstruction, no sign of fluid or collapse. Yet the monitors screamed of suffocation. Her blood gases returned from the laboratory with bewildering results. Oxygen levels elevated far beyond the expected range, as though her cells were saturated to excess. And yet, clinically, she showed every sign of asphyxiation, her skin turning the faint shade of cyanosis, her extremities growing cold. Morozov ordered further checks, repeating procedures, recalibrating machines, certain that some technical failure had misled them. But the devices functioned perfectly, as though mocking his growing desperation with their flawless precision. Each spike and fall in the readings seemed to mirror the flicker of life itself inside her fragile frame, as though she hovered on the edge of two worlds, never fully belonging to either. The team exchanged uncertain glances, whispering possibilities under their breath, but no explanation held. Her tissues appeared almost pristine, blood flow intact, organ function unremarkable. In every measurable way, she resembled a perfectly healthy woman, yet she lay dying before them, slipping further with each passing moment. For Alexei, the weight of helplessness pressed heavily. His experience, forged through years of resuscitations, felt stripped of its authority. Textbooks offered no guidance, protocols faltered, logic collapsed. He found himself not in a battle against an illness, but against an unseen force that refused to be named, a force that seemed to play with the fragile rhythm of breath and pulse as if testing his resolve. While the woman remained motionless in the intensive care unit, investigators worked tirelessly to uncover her identity. They ran her fingerprints through national databases, cross-checked missing persons reports, and searched for any clue that might explain who she was. Yet every attempt ended in silence. There were no matches, no records, no fragments of a documented life. She was a void in the system, a presence without history. Her arrival had yielded nothing to assist them. No identification, no jewelry, no fragments of personal belongings that might anchor her to a place or a past. She had been found with nothing, as though she had emerged out of the night itself. The mystery only deepened as her body was studied more closely. Dr. Alexei Morozov spent long hours poring over her laboratory results and imaging scans. Each value seemed to defy logic, leading not to answers but to deeper puzzles. He noted the absence of anomalies that were common in patients of her age. No faint scars of childhood illnesses, no irregularities from past injuries, no hidden remnants of medical interventions. Her lungs expanded with flawless symmetry, their tissues free of even microscopic signs of scarring or infection. Her heart showed no trace of the wear that accompanied years of stress and exertion. The vessel walls were smooth, unmarked, as though carved to perfection by some unseen hand. It was not just the lack of illness that disturbed him, it was the absence of life's ordinary imperfections. Even the smallest markers of time, the faint lines of healed cuts, the subtle calluses formed by ordinary routines were nowhere to be found. Her skin was unbroken, untouched by the ordinary history of a body that had lived in the world. It was as though she had never been shaped by experience, never marked by chance or hardship. Morozov's unease grew with each observation. He found himself revisiting her charts late into the night, staring at the same flawless patterns until they blurred before his eyes. The more he studied, the more he felt that she had not simply been lost to the record, but had been made to exist outside of it. A troubling thought began to take root in his mind, one he resisted but could not dispel. Perhaps she was not merely an unknown patient, but something constructed, reshaped, or hidden. The perfection of her tissues spoke less of nature and more of design. It hinted at intervention, at deliberate creation, at the possibility that she was part of an experiment concealed from the world. Each time he looked at her still form on the bed, surrounded by the soft glow of monitors, he felt as though he was staring at a secret too vast for him alone to comprehend. The absence of her past became a weight pressing down on the present, leaving him torn between the roles of healer, investigator, and unwilling witness to something beyond his training. The woman's condition deteriorated with each passing hour. Dr. Alexei Morozov remained at her bedside, his eyes fixed on the flickering lines of the monitors. Her body behaved like no patient he had ever encountered. At times, her heart thundered in her chest with an intensity that seemed beyond human endurance, each beat shaking the fragile balance of her system. Moments later, it would falter, slowing until the monitors wailed with urgent alarms, hovering on the edge of irreversible silence. Tests were ordered again and again, yet every result contradicted the last. Blood samples revealed abnormalities that vanished upon retesting. Imaging showed shifting patterns, as though her organs resisted being captured, their outlines changing with each new scan. The consultations with colleagues brought no relief. Some suspected rare metabolic disorders, others considered hidden toxins, but none of their theories fit the shifting puzzle. Every explanation collapsed when compared to the reality unfolding before them. Morozov felt himself trapped in a struggle that defied the foundation of his profession. Each intervention, ventilators adjusted, medications introduced, therapies recalibrated, produced no predictable outcome. The body on the bed seemed to move by rules outside of known physiology, as if she lived within a framework inaccessible to human comprehension. It was like pushing against a wall that could not be seen, a boundary that refused to yield no matter the force applied. Hours turned into nights, and the hospital's routines blurred around him. He grew haunted by the rhythms of her failing body, listening as the beeping monitors became a language of decline. Her breaths, uneven and shallow, echoed in the sterile silence of the ward. Every rise and fall of her chest reminded him that his knowledge, sharpened by years of study and practice, was powerless here. The despair grew quietly but steadily inside him. He had spent his life believing in medicine's ability to hold the line between life and death, to impose order on chaos. But here, at this bedside, he faced the unshakable truth that his tools and expertise could not penetrate the invisible barrier that separated him from her survival. It was not only her life that slipped away with each faltering heartbeat, but his conviction as well. The woman lay suspended between existence and absence, and Morozov could do nothing more than witness the fragile struggle. In that sterile room, under the sterile glow of artificial light, he felt the weight of his own helplessness settle upon him like a shadow that would not lift. In the depths of exhaustion and desperation, Alexei Morozov made a decision that went against the cautious discipline of his profession. He chose to attempt an unapproved and highly experimental approach, a combination of advanced ventilatory techniques and unconventional pharmacological support. It was a gamble with no precedent, a last act of defiance against the relentless collapse unfolding before him. The preparations consumed precious minutes, each step shadowed by the knowledge that the patient's body was deteriorating faster than their interventions could stabilize. He adjusted the ventilator with precise yet trembling hands, forcing air into fragile lungs through a rhythm meant to mimic life more faithfully than standard machines could provide. Alongside this, he infused carefully measured doses of drugs designed to bypass traditional pathways, to coax the heart and brain into synchrony. For long hours, the battle consumed him. The monitors rose and fell with an erratic cadence, swinging between fragile hope and near total silence. At one moment, her pulse climbed, oxygen saturation strengthened, and a flicker of stability spread through the numbers on the screen. Whispers of relief stirred among the staff, as if a miracle might be forming. Yet almost immediately the balance shattered. Heart rate plummeted, oxygen crashed, alarms screamed across the room. The ward became a theater of constant tension. Nurses moved with urgent precision, colleagues hovered at the edge of intervention, but every eye was fixed on Morozov. His commands were sharp, his focus unbroken, yet his face betrayed the erosion of certainty. He fought not only the failing body before him, but also the creeping realization that he was prolonging a struggle that had no resolution. The patient's body resisted every attempt to anchor it to life. The experimental techniques offered only fleeting stability, as though she herself rejected the borrowed time he tried to impose. Each return to rhythm was shorter than the last, each collapse deeper and more absolute. The space between life and death narrowed until the difference could scarcely be measured. Morozov's body ached with fatigue, his mind raw with the weight of failure. He saw in every number on the monitor the reflection of his own futility, the confirmation that medicine could only delay what it could not prevent. Around him, the atmosphere was suffocating, the silence between alarms more unbearable than the shrill warnings themselves. When the brief moments of improvement vanished for the final time, leaving only a steady decline, he understood that his struggle had reached its limit. The experimental efforts had not been salvation, but postponement, stretching hope into a thread so thin it could no longer hold. His hands slowed, the urgency bled from his movements, and in his chest grew the hollow acceptance that he had not granted life, only extended the shadow of its departure. By the time the pale light of morning crept through the narrow hospital windows, the heart of the unknown woman had ceased its final effort. The flat line on the monitor stretched across the screen, unbroken, indifferent, a silent confirmation that the battle had ended. Resuscitation attempts were made with the same precision and urgency as before, but each shock, each infusion, each maneuver failed to summon even the faintest flicker of return. The room fell into stillness, heavy and oppressive, broken only by the fading echoes of the alarms that now carried no meaning. Alexei Morozov stood at her bedside, his glove still stained, his body numb with exhaustion. Yet what pressed upon him most was not fatigue, but an unbearable hollowness. In his years as a physician, he had lost many patients, but never like this. This was not the surrender of an aged body worn by time, nor the tragic inevitability of illness long understood. This was a life that dissolved into silence, without reason, without history, without even a name to anchor her existence to the world she was leaving. As he stared at her still form, he felt that he had not simply failed her, but had collided with something greater than medicine itself, an invisible barrier that knowledge and skill could not penetrate. The machines, the drugs, the protocols, all his tools had been stripped of their power, leaving him to witness the unraveling of a mystery that offered no answer. The very essence of his profession, built on the belief that each crisis could be solved with science, faltered in the face of this unexplainable void. When he finally sat at his desk to write the death report, the words came slowly, each sentence dragging through his hand as if resisting his will. Cause of death, time of death, clinical details. He recorded them with the precision expected of him, but each line felt like fiction. The official account bore no resemblance to the truth he carried within, the truth of a life that slipped away with no diagnosis, no context, no identity. He knew that what he signed was a mask, a hollow record for a hollow ending. As the morning staff moved through the corridors and the hospital returned to its routine rhythm, Morozov remained alone with his thoughts. The world outside continued, indifferent to the silent vanishing of one unclaimed life, yet he knew that for him the weight of this moment would never fade. It would live within him, an unspoken reminder that even those who dedicate themselves to saving lives must face defeats that defy reason. He left the room, but her absence lingered behind him, clinging to the sterile air and echoing through the hollow of his chest. He realized that the greatest wound left by this night was not the patient's death itself, but the certainty that he would never know who she was or why her body had defied every law he had been taught. Her memory would not fade into statistics or hospital records. It would remain as a shadow etched into his conscience, an unanswered question that would accompany him until his own end.